Say something.
Welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host for today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
I'm here, brother. And now you sound perfect.
Good.
Yeah, no, I was all like, oh man, I paid for the good internet. It seems to be working. What's going on? And then you were sounding like you were in a tin can or something. And now I wiggled my headphone wire and you sound perfect. It's awesome.
Oh, there we go. Figuring it out. Tim is still on the road, folks, but we're making it work. Work. And I still gotta send in last week's episode too. But I felt like we needed to do a show this week because the Libertarian National Convention is still fresh. This is a thing that we often talk about, and so we'll give both our online audience and the WYSL audience like our take on this, because we do occasionally talk Libertarian Party politics, and we will probably talk about the Libertarian Party tonight and like maybe one other time between now and the election. Like probably maybe the candidate will make a big splash, but most of the time we talk about local and New York State stuff. And the Libertarian candidate's not going to be on the ballot in New York State, so like
he's not.
Like I wish he was going to be, like, but I'm not trying to be negative. He's just not. It's not going to happen.
No,
it's not his fault. But
no, it's nobody's fault or everybody's fault or
it's Andrew Cuomo's fault.
It is actually Andrew. That I blame the government for lots of things, and this is one more thing I can blame the government for.
You can blame the government on this one. That's appropriate in this case.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about the eventful Libertarian National Convention. We will talk about the winners.
We will.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. Winners both in the electoral sense, winners in the maybe in the politics sense. We'll chat about all of that. And of course, if you have questions, commentary, Tim and I were not there, so we're just watching it from like afar. And I even think like either of us were really watching it like all that closely because it's Memorial Day weekend and we were having fun with our families.
Yeah, and I was watching the reactions on Twitter because somehow my buddy's like campground got not campground, but like where we all go to hang out, got Wi-Fi up to where we do our big bonfire. So I was like checking out the responses, and it's an emotional time, Kevin. Emotional.
It is. So we're going to talk about all that stuff. And love to hear from you what y'all think of how things turned out, the candidates, and all the weird stuff that went down, and and then like what it means for maybe national politics, what it means for New York State politics, which is probably not much, but we'll talk about it anyway. Because it's part of it. We've mentioned on the show like, this is the party's trying to get on the ballot, and we'll get some updates on that. And it's in. That's what we'll get to. So we'll head in 10 seconds.
Now, an hour of clarity for exhausted people of our nation mired in toxic partisanship. Left versus right, us versus them. While we pay to keep our politicians fighting, how do we, the people, rise up and solve the great challenges of our time? We do it by embracing freedom and liberty. There may be no such thing as a free lunch, but this hour is as close as it gets. Welcome to A Free Solution.
Welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
I'm here, brother. I'm traveling. I'm out in the world, traveling from city to city. This week, I'm still coming to you from Lowell, Massachusetts, but tomorrow I've got to travel to Connecticut once again. Like I'm just like world traveler, solar panel expert. Like.
And just all over the place, leading with your project expertise everywhere, getting stuff done.
Or repeatedly going to fix one computer system in Connecticut that seems to be giving us a hard time, but we're going to get it squared away one of these days. I promise you that.
And it's good that you survived Memorial Day weekend. You made it through.
Barely, brother. Oh my God, it was wild. It was wild. I love my friends. I had one of the best weekends of my life. I don't get to see these guys often enough because, in fact, traveling interferes with some of my social relationships. And dude, top to bottom, left to right, Friday through Sunday, just 3 of the best days of my life. We just had a blast. And they still make fun of me for drinking Bud Light, and I don't care. And I just don't care. I'll keep drinking it.
It's fine. You drink. You if you like it, you drink it. Do your thing, man.
Oh no,
No
I don't
shame.
like it.
No, but
It just doesn't get me drunk.
You just hate. Wait, are you hate drinking Bud Light? Like why?
I stay sober
What
when
are
I
you
drink
doing?
it. That's all. Yeah, I stay sober-ish when I drink it.
That's fair. I mean, that's kind of why I drink. Like, I'll drink like Jenny Lights because I'm gonna have my college reunion this weekend, and I can't really drink at all. But like when I have done that in the past, it's like I'll just drink this light beer, and I'll have like, one of those an hour, and then it's fine.
Yeah.
Like days like that are a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah. That's basically just keeping you hydrated if you do it right. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's not.
Anyway, drinking weekends aside, and speaking of drinking, the Libertarian National Convention was last week.
There was some drinking. It looked like
beer, gummies, all sorts of stuff.
Oh yeah.
And we'll talk about that too. So the Libertarians have selected the presidential candidate. So listen, the WYSL audience, like we're gonna spend this episode breaking down like what's going on with the Libertarian Party. Like we're gonna spend most of the time talking about that, like in the libertarian movement generally, right? Because there's a bit of a division going on about, as usual, what direction the libertarian movement should go. Whether or not they should support a Republican candidate like Donald Trump, or whether they should support the Libertarian Party candidate, who's a guy named Chase Oliver. Right, he ended up winning, squeaking by in the convention. Like it got pretty close, actually. Like I think that the 6th round of voting was like 49% to 44%, and the runner-up, Michael Rechtenwald, I think, absent a mistake the night before, I think he actually might have gotten through, but might have made a tactical mistake. So we'll talk about that too.
Sure.
And so and the other big thing that happened in the convention, and we talked about this a little bit on, and I think a WYSL portion of the show too, is that Donald Trump spoke at the Libertarian National Convention. He was invited by the chair. He had kind of reached out, but the chair had invited him. Also invited Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Joe Biden. RFK Jr. did show up. Joe Biden did not show up, but Trump was kind of the headline event of Saturday evening for the Libertarian National Convention. Drew a bit of attention there. Tim, did you have a chance to watch his speech or at least catch some of the highlights?
Nope, I didn't. Look,
busy enjoying life. That's the right way to do it.
Yeah, this weekend has been dedicated, as always. Every Memorial Day weekend is we have a big event where we all get together and hang out. And frankly, I'm kind of done with a certain level of investment in party politics. So I'm like,
that's fair. I get it.
That's that. You know what I mean? So look, you and I had talked about this Trump thing. I thought it was pretty cool that he showed up. I think we got some like promises that he didn't keep in his last term remade for he'll keep them in his next term kind of things. Which is whatever. Okay, that's whatever. As the WSL audience knows, that I like Trump slightly more than you, but I also recognize that he's didn't keep his promises, that he spent a lot of money, and these things are real issues for me. These are things that people need to be educated about over and over again. And so to stand on principle, I've got to say Trump spent more money as fast as any other president ever. He got rolled by the deep state. Okay, so let's let him get rolled again by the deep state. Like, come on, guys. So anyways,
I do say, Trump is fighting the deep state. But they just got the best of him the first time. So I'm like, okay, so he either wasn't able to handle the job, or he's lying to you. One or the other. Either like he couldn't hack it, or like he's part of the system too. Like that's just it. Those are to me the two choices there. But he did make some big promises. He promised to, promised to protect crypto. He promised to totally spend responsibly this time. He promised to appoint libertarians to his cabinet.
That actually I see as a valuable promise, Kevin. But is there a cost? Was he like, well, if I get elected, or if the Libertarian Party like endorses me? Was there some sort of tit for tat, or is he going to actually?
He kind of implied if libertarians supported him, because this is basically his pitch was to, like, again, it's why I was kind of against it. Like, it was just for him to beg libertarians for their votes, right? Is the opportunity to do that? Like that's what it was. That's why he wanted to do it. And I suspect what he wanted to do was he knew that there's a chunk of the electorate that is small L libertarian who could go either way, that they could go for the Republican candidate because they don't like Joe Biden, or they could go for the libertarian candidate. And what he wanted to do was create a few sound bites of him making promises to that group of libertarians so that they would go his way, and that they would pressure their friends who are in similar positions to go that way. Because now both of us, if we say anything about not voting for Trump, they're gonna be like, look how libertarian he is, look at these libertarian promises, and we're gonna be like, that guy's full of it because he made those promises before and he didn't keep them. Why would I trust him this time? He doesn't keep his promises to like the people who are like his chief of staff, for goodness sakes. Why would he be loyal to us, the people who booed him? Like, he's not going to be loyal to us. You give him power. Like, why would he care about keeping any of his promises to libertarians? He's not going to. Don't be naive.
It's kind of hilarious to me, like the tyranny of the hilarity of the whole Trump thing, right? Like, he is honestly, I feel like everybody's conspiring to make him president again. I want to be perfectly honest. Like, he's going to be president again. It's going to be hilarious. He's going to not keep his promises again, because that's reality. And here we are. That's a good point. Like, do people not know who libertarians are? Like, we're the most argumentative group of cats that I've ever seen, right? Like, it's just like, I'm not, all of a sudden, Trump is not going to change my mind. My friends telling me that I should vote for Trump is definitely not going to change my mind. Like, that is, and arguably, guys, I like Trump way more than I like Joe Biden. Like, there's not even a comparison. But like, do I want to be president again? No. But do I care if Joe Biden is president over him? I'm going to ask you, what was the difference, right? Like, what's the difference? So,
yeah, right.
And people are going to get mad. People are going to get mad that I asked that question. But what's the difference? What's the real difference? They have some perception of different takes on cultural issues. Other than that, they spend like drunken sailors. They bomb kids in other countries. These things are real. Like, there's not a substantial enough difference for me to be like, all right, well, you're right, I should vote for Trump. Sorry, not happening.
Yeah, it's not gonna happen. And yep, exactly. And so we'll talk about like the other big promise he made is that the free Ross Ulbricht too, who's he was the one who had created the website Silk Road. So it kind of operated on a Tor system, but people were using that to sell drugs and do other nefarious activity. And Ross got, I think, several lifetime sentences for being able to building that site, which isn't fair, and he should get out of jail. But to me, like, it would have been great if Donald Trump pardoned him in the previous administration. I don't believe that he's. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I'm just going to say that honestly, exponentially, the odds of me voting for him would have been affected if he had pardoned the real whistleblowers of Edward Snowden, Julian Assange, and then commuted Ross Ulbricht's sentence. I do think the FBI did a good job of framing up Ross for some kind of potential murder charges and stuff like that, like being invested in what's the word for it? But anyways, Ross made some mistakes. Okay.
Oh yeah, no, for sure he did. Like he actually did some criminal activity too, which is something I think a lot of libertarians forget. It's like the sentence was way too harsh, but like
absolutely, brother. Absolutely.
It wasn't totally unfair for him to like have gotten some amount of punishment. Now, that's probably going to be an unpopular statement, but like it's true, and it's also like definitely like I've seen some people like, oh, Trump's promising to do this thing that he could have done in the last administration, but he's going to do now. Free Ross Ulbricht, and now I'm going to support him. I'm like, I'm sorry, like that is not a good enough reason to vote for the guy. Like there's everything else that he's done. That one thing is not a good enough reason to vote for the guy because there's so many other ways in which like he made our country like less free that I can't support it. Sorry. Like if he actually came around on other issues, that'd be great. And it would have been better. Like I get in a way what the Libertarian Party is trying to do, right? Because I've done this. I think it's not an unfair strategy for third parties to try to extract concessions from major party candidates, duopoly candidates, in order to advance policy, right? Because one thing third parties can do is if they get a big enough share of the vote, is they incentivize the duopoly to co-opt our issues, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, I get it. And like I've played that card like here in my area too. Like where it's like, okay, like you're building a coalition. We want to be a part of it. In order to be part of it, like these are things that are really important to us. If you talk about these issues and make some progress on these issues, then like our folks will be more likely to vote for you, right? It works even better when you have incumbents who are going to be pressured to co-opt those issues and act on those things in real time. Because if you have someone who's, especially someone who may not be the most honest broker, promising to do stuff, once they have power, there's nothing more you can threaten him with, especially since he probably won't be running for a third term. I'm just going to guess, like, there's nothing you can withhold from him. There's no reason for him to fulfill that promise. So yeah, it's not a good enough reason to vote for the guy. He made some promises. We're going to appoint a libertarian and free Ross Ulbricht. Okay, cool. But like, I don't believe you're actually going to do it. Like name the cabinet positions you're going to do.
Yeah. Do that. Honestly, like, and what libertarian is he going to pick? Is he going to pick like me to be a part of his cabinet? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's not going to happen. It's got to be some politically popular libertarian, of which.
You want to name something specific for Rand Paul? Like, cool. Like, I get that Rand Paul, like, I generally like, or Thomas Massey, but it's not going to be Rand Paul or Thomas Massey. It's going to be like, oh yeah, like I've decided to pick Elise Stefanik. She's libertarian, and we're all going to be like, what? No, she ain't. What are you talking about?
No, she's not. I mean, look, there's a soft spot in my heart for real conservatives, and Thomas Massey, for example, labels himself a real conservative. Just like there's a soft spot in my heart for real liberals, like real, not part of the duopoly kind of nonsense who enjoy affiliating with power, people who are taking hard stances on important issues that make sense for individual liberty, of which both conservatives and liberals claim to do. So the people that do in fact do that get a lot of credit from me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Like take real stances on stuff. It's just
not
something a lot of politicians are doing nowadays too. It's stop stances and empty promises, honestly. Let's get to a couple of these comments though.
Let's do it.
Brian on YouTube says, I've only seen excerpt of his speech, the one where he got booed after asking for us to vote for him. Yep, he did. Yeah, because he asked for it. He said that, oh, you guys should nominate me. He got booed. The libertarians booed him a bunch because he said a bunch of stuff that wasn't libertarian, and he got booed because mostly, I mean, despite the party chair and like Dave Smith being like, oh, we should be polite. Like, guys, you've seen libertarian conventions. They're not going to be. I'm sorry. It's just not who libertarians are, for better or worse. Sometimes it's not great, but like that's just what it is. But boot them on a few different things.
Look, that's what I'm saying. Do they know who libertarians are? Like we're the cats of the political world, man. You can't herd us. You can't make us false promises. Maybe if you feed us, we'll let you pet us. Like that's it. That's the deal.
And like his was like empty pandering. Like, to be fair, like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. did a better job of this. Like, honestly, like he did a better, like, I know you didn't really catch much of it, but he did a better job talking about issues where he's sincere in the areas of overlap with libertarians. Things like he's now kind of a free speech guy. He talked about the COVID stuff and like that stuff well with libertarians, and it not well enough for him to get the nomination. He got like 2% of the vote. So, but like the speech went over a lot better. I think he probably is more likely to win over like kind of leaning libertarian voters outside of the party space. Because again, it's a partisan convention. Like these are the diehards who are there. They're there to support the party.
Yeah.
Junior probably got more libertarians than Trump did, because Trump, I know, to me, his speech felt a lot more empty. I mean, the only appeal to his is that it's more likely that he's going to win than RFK Jr. That's the only appeal to that. But I just don't believe that he's going to follow through on it.
Right.
Then also Trump decided to dunk on the party because Trump is Trump too. So he's going to mock people who are like heckling him. Said like, "Are you going to get your 3%?" Like, you get okay, sure, whatever, man. That 3% though is the reason why he's there. That 3% matters to him. That was the difference between him winning and losing. So
that's such a good point. He came there to beg us for that 3%. Even if he could get 2% of that 3%, might have made the difference in a couple of states. And look, that's real. People were coming up to me like, "You guys made Trump lose," and I'm like, "Yeah, well, there you have it." You know what I mean? Like, get some principles, man.
Yeah.
I guess I've always been that way my entire life, but still,
you do that.
The issue is why they can't commit to voting for Trump is because of what the dichotomy that we presented already tonight, Kevin. I don't want to belabor it, but like, he promised to do things, he didn't. He's not pro two-way. He's a populist authoritarian whom I like better than Joe Biden, who is also a populist authoritarian. I don't like either one of them enough to adhere to their power lust. Like, I just can't do it. I just can't.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
Nope. Yeah, it's not. I don't know. No, it's something I'm sick of. I'm sick of listening to those folks. And let's see. I want to get this one too. Brian says, "Here's the difference. Trump had a plan to exit Afghanistan. Biden didn't. I mean, I don't know, man. Biden did leave Afghanistan. Now,
yeah,
whether or not the plan was good is different. Trump didn't follow through on a plan. Biden did,
right.
For better or worse.
Biden admits that he followed through on Trump's plan and Trump's agreement to exit Afghanistan. Yeah. But like, look, we couldn't live without a forever war. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we still had to kind of keep the ones we had going. We sort of look. I think you and I have a little difference. Like, I think we kind of instigated Russia into Ukraine with this NATO kind of bumping up against Russia's borders. That one's a hard one. I'm open to discussing it. I don't know. You and I have talked about it before, so I don't know that we want to go into it on this show. But it's just, we got to have them, and it's very, I'm very anti-war. Not, I don't know. So
it's good to be
I'm
anti-war.
uncomfortable with all of it. Yeah.
No, 100%.
So I'm anti that war too.
Fair enough. That I don't think we should get involved. But I know we won't rehash that in this show. I'm trying to get through a few of the other ones. Now, I know folks are mentioning some of the other candidates. Like I like the Mapstead Sharp. Ron Paul spoke too. Shelly on YouTube says, he gave a speech. Still popular. And Jeff on Facebook says, "What are the pros and cons of Oliver?" We're going to talk about that next segment because we got like a minute left.
Yeah, cool. I got the cons. I hope you have the pros.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a good candidate.
Yeah, I'm going to be like, I got a few cons. I do think I'm negotiable on him. Like, he doesn't freak me out, but I have some cons. I've got some problems with him. So we'll hash them out.
Now maybe we'll get this in the next segment too, or maybe we'll do this one on break. Sean Han asked, "What do you think of RFK spending $1.1 million to get on the ballot in New York State?" So we'll talk about that. But we are up for a break. Thanks again for joining us here on A Free Solution on WYSL. We're going to be back in just a few minutes. Talk to you soon. So maybe we do the break one. We'll tease that when we come back for WYSL. They can listen to this. They can listen to the podcast. They want to hear us answer Sean Han's question.
Not just
RFK.
Not just a radio show, but in fact a long form podcast at the same time. Which, guys, Kevin and I are amazing just for those facts. Like multitasking, long form podcast, and a radio show. You don't get that everywhere.
Absolutely. So you're getting the whole package deal here. What do you think, RFK, spending that money?
Free speech ain't free, bro. Like, that's the reality, okay?
Kind of is.
So RFK spending $1.1 million, that's what it's going to take to get on the ballot in New York State. Larry Sharp, the LPNY, needed to organize to get that $1.1 million. And the LP, the Libertarian Party, needed to at least try. I feel like perhaps they didn't,
Yeah.
So
it's
I don't know.
Like it's the reality of the cost of getting on the ballot in New York State went up because now I've talked to other parties about this too. Like it all comes down to money. Either you need the volunteer like hours to do that, in which case you're getting like, the hourly equivalent of spending money anyway. You need to build an army of volunteers to do that, or you need a bunch of money to pay people to get on the ballot. And especially when you have multiple candidates trying to get on the ballot in one election cycle, the price of petitioners goes up too. It requires a lot of money.
Yeah.
And again, if he's willing to spend that to get on the ballot in New York State, good for him. He provides another choice. I've talked about him that he's not my guy, but like, I respect him putting in the money and the effort to try to like get on the ballot and to try to convince people.
Yeah. Yeah. And look, I'm okay with it. I don't like how expensive free speech is, but I accept that free speech isn't free. So
yeah,
I don't like that it costs that much money.
It'd be a lot cooler if that jerk Andrew Cuomo didn't, raise the signature threshold to get on the ballot to, for some reason, like protect, like to make sure that like the riffraff couldn't get access to state funds. So basically, like just reviewing for folks listening, they were doing campaign finance reform. They were going to offer state money to people who got on the ballot who passed certain like, support and fundraising thresholds. And then they're like, oh, and for some reason related to that, so we don't like spend too much money, we need to make it more difficult for third parties to get on the ballot while also funding the incumbents more. Like, cool. Sure. Yeah, great. That's awesome. Like, we're just going to support the people. Like, and it was passed as like a Democrat thing, like small D Democrat things. Like, oh, this is like getting money out of politics by giving more support to folks. So dumb. It's such a like nasty cronyist thing that like people forget about. And that's why I don't support Andrew Cuomo's comeback tour. Screw that guy.
Oh, screw that
guy. Among so many other reasons, but that's one of them.
Yeah.
It's like a million reasons why I need to support that scumbag.
I almost single-handedly ratioed his brother on Twitter. It was an epic moment where he's like talking about journalism, and I'm like, bro, aren't you a journalist? Like, aren't the questions you are asking other journalists to come up with questions you could have asked when you had the big stage in the middle of the COVID narrative, in the middle of the COVID battle, in the middle of the COVID authoritarianism? This dude had an opportunity to ask the questions he's asking, and instead he crapped all over everybody that questioned the government's narrative. And so I don't know, him and Dave Smith going to be battling out this Friday. I might actually watch that.
Yeah, it could be interesting. I said, Dave Smith, I do not like his arguments on several things, but he's he's like a good debater. Like he is entertaining. He's sharp. He's tough
I love his debate style. There's about, I don't know, I can find a few things occasionally to disagree with him about if I try really hard, but that's just my nature. And I can find areas where I would want to draw a cleaner line. You know what I mean by that? Like, I want to draw a cleaner line of what he's arguing for versus what I'm saying. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I get it. And so I just don't like, I don't like his whole like, immigration should only work if people are invited and stuff like that. I don't care for it, but like, that's neither here nor there. Here, I'm just going to lower my video definition a little bit for you. So, and a couple other things, like Sean Hand says, the RFK campaign said they were paying petitioners $90 an hour. That's wild, man. That is bonkers. That's so expensive. And Shelly on YouTube says, if RFK was on the ballot line in New York, we make sure that all third parties can run. I doubt it. I mean, he's there to there to get on a ballot for himself. Sean says that he's apparently suing New York State, and hopefully that helps LP in the future. Hopefully that'd be cool if he gets a successful lawsuit to say that the current system is unfair or something. Great. That'd be awesome. That would
be great.
I hope that happens.
Yeah. And let's say hi to Brian, who hasn't been here for a while. Brian asks, Brian, I don't know if he wants me to say his last name, but I know what it is. Anyways, I'm glad you're back too, brother. We haven't seen you in a while.
Absolutely.
Our buddy John Thuman, who was a regular, we're missing him. Somebody's got to reach out to that guy, get him back here. But thanks, Brian, for being back. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for listening. All right, we'll go back to the main show, and then we'll kind of talk about like how the Libertarian party nomination process works, like just real briefly, the mechanics, and then we'll talk about who won, and then we'll talk about the pros and cons of the Libertarian Party candidate. And then last segment we'll talk about whatever's left.
That's good.
National politics impact, whatever. All right, we're gonna go back in about 5 seconds. Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host for today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
I'm still here, brother. We're having a great kind of inside baseball talk, and I think we got to continue. We got to talk about the Libertarian candidates, how they get nominated. I think you know more about that stuff than me. You're more of a policy wonk than I am. But here we go. We got Chase Oliver, and guys, like what, last week, the week before, Mike Termott as the VP candidate. So let's go. How did we get that guy?
That's right. Yeah, we had that guy on our show just a few weeks ago. And I will say for WYSL audience too, we did end up talking about RFK Jr. for like almost 10 minutes during the break. So if you want to hear that, go find our podcast, go look up A Free Solution, and you can listen to that and hear our thoughts on him getting on the ballot and what it took to get there, because it was not an easy process for him either. But so yeah, those are the two candidates for the Libertarian Party. Chase Oliver, who he's an anti-war activist from Georgia, and he's well known for being the guy who got enough of the vote during the Georgia Senate election back in 2022 that it forced the two Republican and Democrat candidates into a runoff. And so he split the difference there, so that he got some national media coverage out of that. He's ran for Congress before too. And it's an interesting guy, very like principled libertarian. Mike Termott too. Again, listen to the show with him. A former police officer from Florida, and he had his whole he had the Gold New Deal thing, right? And so like we were able to talk briefly with him. We only had 25 minutes or so, but it was good chatting with him too. And he was kind of in third place, made a deal to get the VP spot and endorse Chase in the final round. So how the Libertarian Party nominations work, right? It's not like Republicans and Democrats. And I say this too. I've been at two presidential conventions. I was at the 2016 one, and I was at the 2020 one. So I've been a delegate twice. I didn't do it this year because of a bunch of different reasons. One, being less active, and two, the whole having a child and heart surgery thing kind of would have made that difficult anyway. But so the states select their delegates with their own process, and none of those delegates are bound to vote for anyone. So it's not like the primaries the Republicans and Democrats go through, where like you have these delegates who are like bound on like the first ballot to vote for a certain candidate, right? The party selects their delegates through a process, and it might be an election at a state convention. They could do primary type processes. It could just be a state committee selecting folks. It's all sorts of different things. The state parties just select their people, however they select their people. They show up to this convention, and then they vote, and the candidate has to get at least 50% to be the nominee. It's not a plurality rule, right? So it's not like you have these 5 candidates and the one candidate who gets the most votes wins. Because if that were the case, another guy named Michael Rechtenwald would have won. He got 32% on the first ballot. Mm-hmm. And so he was in first place. And then, Chase, Mike Termott, Lars Mapstead, who's also been on the show before, Josh Smith, Jacob Hornberger, they kind of split the rest among the people who were kind of the top candidates. There's a handful of write-ins too. Donald Trump got like 6 votes. RFK got like 19 votes. But any candidate under 5% gets removed from the ballot. And then you keep doing voting until you either have 50%, and in every round you drop off the lowest candidate, anyone who's lower than 5% or the lowest candidate. And so they ended up doing it for 7 rounds, 7 whole rounds, which they were voting until like 12:30 at night.
Wow.
And just kept going. And it's like it was a hotly contested race. The 6th round ended up being Michael Rechtenwald and Chase Oliver. And Chase Oliver got 49%. Michael Rectenwald got 44%. He was the lowest candidate, so they dropped him out. And then Noda is always on the ballot because Chase Oliver didn't get over 50% in round 6. It was Chase Oliver versus Noda, so they did round 7, and he got 60% of the vote, with 36.69% of the vote voting Noda, which would have been really tough for a lot of state affiliates. Yeah, because if the delegation actually did select none of the above, a lot of state affiliates would be in deep trouble because they need to put on a candidate for president to get ballot access for their parties, a lot of these states. And so they would have been
to maintain ballot access, screwed. You mean?
Yeah, to maintain ballot access. They would have been unable to field a candidate. Right. I mean, I'm sure there would have been something, but almost 40% of the parties like, we'll just not run anyone, which is an interesting decision.
Well, I mean, that's what I was saying about us. We're that stubborn, that principled, that we will shoot ourselves. We will blow our own toes off of our own feet to make a point. Like that's who we are, bro.
That's absolutely true.
I'm kind of proud of that. Yeah, I mean, in a way, I kind of like that. But
the Libertarian Party is staying in character.
Yeah. So let's talk about who Chase Oliver is a little bit. I think our WYSL audience and our listeners regularly, we know who Mike Dermott is. What do you think about Chase Oliver?
I like him. Again, he's a younger guy, first of all. Like that I think is something a lot of voters are looking for. I think he's 38. And that stands in pretty stark contrast to Joe Biden and Donald Trump, who kind of seem to be noticeably older, as in like, affecting their performance older. And he's Chase Oliver's a younger, charismatic guy.
Yeah, that could be for sure.
And he has good, solid libertarian positions that I think, in contrast to Jo Jorgensen, who I think sometimes framed her issue positions in a way that appealed to like people within the party and the academics. I think Chase Oliver has framed his issue positions in a way that like more average voters can understand. Like when he talks about things like, immigration, he's like, okay, let's have an Ellis Island style immigration system where it's like, we'll streamline the paperwork. They're not even talking about border security. And I imagine with someone like Mike Dermott, who's kind of more like pro border security, they would probably come to some sort of compromise message on this where they're like, okay, like we're not necessarily saying like cut all this stuff, but also like it should be easier for immigrants to be able to come in and navigate this system. Right. That's just a guess. I don't know where they'll actually land on it, but talks about ending victimless crimes, talks about ending the failed war on drugs, and mostly focuses on like the areas where we can make like real progress on cannabis reform at the federal level, stuff that like we've talked about, like I think even last week on this show. And so I think that's something that's wildly popular and absolutely we could do. He talks about protecting privacy and civil liberties, ending the TSA, love it. Ending the Patriot Act, ending wars. He talks about like cutting off aid to Ukraine. He said that's a direct part of his platform. He said end aid to Ukraine and aid to Israel. So like tried to promote peace.
Right.
It talks about cutting spending. It talks about cutting regulations. Talks about ending the Department of Education. So he has some like radical positions too. He talks about ending like the student loan program, but explains why it actually like drives up costs. Gun rights, talks about that. I mean, he's I think one of the things he's kind of gone on, like he talks about he's a gay man, which is something that people have tended to bring up frequently, but he talks about like as someone who is gay, like he believes in the right to self-defense because there's some people who don't like that lifestyle and that, well, not lifestyle, but like the don't like who he is as a person, and he needs to be able to defend himself if someone decides to take that dislike and turn it into violence. So he talks about being armed for self-protection, and that's why everyone should have the right to bear arms. So I mean, I could go on like about like his different issue positions, but again, interesting guy. I think like he makes a good case in terms of framing issues in a way that people will find a bit more accessible. Shelley says Joe speaks like a boring professor, and yeah, I mean she made some other strange choices. Spike I thought was a more compelling candidate.
She did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Spike I thought was a more compelling candidate last election cycle. And I don't dislike Joe. I just didn't find her that exciting. Like she was everyone's compromise candidate last time around.
Right. Everyone's favorite second choice, I think is how you put it last time, right?
Yeah, basically. So Tim, give me your thoughts, because I know you're like I'm pretty excited about Chase Oliver. I think Chase Oliver is a good candidate, and a solid choice for the Libertarian Party. And
okay,
go ahead.
Yeah, so the wormhole where I think that Chase gets too caught up in what I call a persuasive style of identity politics. And every piece of identity politics that I run across bothers me. So where Chase says armed gay guys are harder to oppress, I'm not sure if he said that or if I'm making that up. But
yeah, he did. Yeah.
Armed citizens of the United States are harder to oppress. And I want clearer messaging like that. He's participated in some and look, I'm not unamenable to this, but he's participated in like a drag queen story hour. He's labeled issues like he wants to bring out and use the word like cisgendered versus a trans peer. And I don't want that kind of messaging. Like my favorite libertarian messaging or my favorite libertarian messengers or my favorite libertarian politicians, I don't know what their their positions are on this identity politics situation. Does that make sense? And I don't like if you want to get involved in gender politics and identity politics, you've already got a team in power that is going to crush you because they're already in power. Does that make sense? That's my biggest criticism of Chase, and I think if he communicates his way out of that, he's going to be fine. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, like some of the stuff just doesn't bother me as much, right? Like again, like however, like he's speaking to his story of how he found his way to like libertarianism, which like apparently was at like a Pride festival, which I'll be honest, like the Pride Fest in Rochester used to be like one of our best events for candidate signatures, because a lot of the like older folks there remember how much the government hates them. And like, he's coming from like a place like that. Where he's like, hey, like the government used to treat like people like me like garbage, and like that's how we got to it. And so that he speaks to who he is to that, and it doesn't bother me. That I know people like they think it what does bother me is that people think it's an argument like, oh, are you going to support this guy? And it's like him holding like a rainbow Gadsden flag. I'm like, why? Because he was in a pride parade. Like, who cares? Why does that matter that much? Like, I really don't think it matters like that he's talks about his identity, because lots of people talk about their identity. If you're proud to be like Italian or whatever, you can talk about that too, whatever. Like, it's fine. That's part of you. Like, I don't care. And if you use that connection to talk about like advancing libertarian principles, then great. I mean, like we can jump into like some of the other like actual specific policy stuff, but like the identity thing, like whatever, like if you use that to advance liberty, then that's fine for me. If you're using it to like grow the government and to divide people, then yeah, that's a different matter altogether.
Which is actually a pretty good point and a pretty good counter to my concerns already. I just feel like we had an opportunity with Trump coming to our convention to reach those small L libertarians that I see. Some of Chase's things that he's using to recruit people, I see as there's already a party in power that's going to take advantage of those things. And I'm wondering where he's going to pull votes from. Does that seem like a fair question?
Oh, sure. I mean, there's that. I don't think it's totally unfair to say that he's a little bit more like liberal or left coded than like right coded, right? Like there are more right coded candidates.
Sure.
There. Rechtenwald and like Josh Smith being like two of them. who would have been more likely to pull people from the Trump side, because they speak to a certain cultural style that like is at least kind of adjacent to how Trump is, and Chase Oliver is not that. He's a lot more cosmopolitan. He talks more about like kind of a small L liberal vision of like everyone being like equal before the eyes of the law type of stuff, right? And that's not how the right wing talks about people. Like that's just what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Right, we're out of time for this segment, so we can continue our discussion on the candidates, Chase Oliver, and the Libertarian Convention in just a few minutes. We'll be back very soon here on WYSL on A Free Solution. Yeah.
So how'd that go? I feel like I was cutting out on you there. Very annoying.
Yeah, it seemed like you might have been getting a bit delayed there for a second, so I just kind of kept on going a bit longer. So sorry, folks, with our video.
No, you did great. Yeah, no, you did great. Like I feel like I had great internet. I could see it kind of like getting a little choppy, and I can hear a little delay, and then I've got to listen. Like I got to try to piece together. I get a delay, and then all of a sudden a bunch of words all at once. And like being an old dude, like the holy cow, I can't barely comprehend. Like, so the internet, as good as it was, is kind of like gotten rough here, which is annoying. I paid extra money for it, so I'm gonna ask for a refund.
It's funny, as you're like gritting through your teeth, you're like chopping up and like getting that robot voice too. I paid extra money for it. It's sorry, man. This stinks.
Dang it. Now, do you think, just out of curiosity, like, can I do it like a hotspot through my phone? Would that be better?
Maybe.
I don't think it would, right? Kind of a bottleneck.
Probably not. It depends on how good the 4G is there. But so like, I'm probably gonna cut all this out of the podcast, folks. Sorry, folks listening online. I did want to like in the break, I want to talk about like kind of what happened with the conservative candidate. Look, I mean, like or more right coded candidate in the race, which is Michael Rechtenwald. So just like inside baseball for the, and we'll say what this was on WYSL. They can listen to the podcast if they want it, but like the Mises Caucus, like those folks, they kind of picked their guy, Michael Rechtenwald, who's an interesting fella because he was a Marxist not too long ago, and then he was like a Trump supporter. Like he talked about how like a Trump speech made him like moved him to tears and stuff like in 2022. And so here's the guy, and like I've seen him give like a couple like good and interesting speeches, like not really my, he was never really my candidate. I wouldn't have considered him, but he kind of blew it. He had his moment to really like showcase his effectiveness to a national audience by giving a rebuttal to like Trump's speech to give the immediate response afterwards. Oh, excuse me. And he had been in the debate. He did, a lot of people said he did pretty well in the debate. And then he gets to like give this rebuttal, and he's weird, like moving his arms around in a strange way, and says he doesn't want to be part of the Trump bashing fest, and like walks off after a minute. And then he comes back later and he posted this, and someone had screenshotted it, and he's like, hey, I'm really sorry what happened. I had been smoking like a hit or two before conventions, and it was really helping me loose up and deliver a more fluent message. But tonight somebody handed me a gummy, and I thought it would have a very similar effect, but it ended up being too much. I didn't know if it would be that strong. I'll recover and have a better day tomorrow. Like, dude got too high.
This
like,
is the most important moment of your life.
Like, it's such a libertarian thing to do.
That's pretty bad.
Yeah, it's bad.
It's perfect, but also,
and he almost still won. Like, he got very close. A bunch of people like still supported him after this. Like, I don't know why they didn't like switch to another candidate. I don't know why like the Mises folks didn't be like, well, you know what? He had his moment and like choked. Like, let's go support Mike Tremont, right? Like, who I think would have been like a good compromise candidate between the factions. Like, again, I kind of like the guy. Like, I didn't agree with everything. I don't agree with everything about his platform, but I like the guy, and he ended up being the VP candidate.
Yeah.
I don't know why they didn't just like rally and say, you know what, we don't want Chase because Chase is too lefty. I don't think so, but I a bunch of other people say that. Let's rally around this dude instead. Instead, they stuck with this guy who got too high to be able to give a speech. Like, my goodness, we used to have candidates who could hold it together on gummies. Gary Johnson, our man, like, he can hold it together. The Libertarian Party used to be men of substance. What happened?
That's awesome. That's an awesome way to put it. I do think the Mises Caucus, at the end of the day, endorsed Mike Termott and put him over the top for the VP nomination, for the VP slot. So I think
they wanted Clint Russell.
You know,
they won Clint,
which
Clint
was weird because, right, but at the last minute, they endorsed Mike Termott. Michael Heiss from the floor endorsed Mike Termott. So that was a strange bedfellows get made at these conventions, bro. Like, what
that's what it is. Like, everyone's in the same room, like, working deals and stuff. It's like, folks, if you're listening, if you ever get a chance, like, if you get involved in like state politics, it is a lot of fun. Like, it's a good time. Like I said, I was there in 2016 where, like, a bunch of us were trying to convince others to vote for Larry Sharp over Bill Weld, and like, I don't know. It was an interesting time. That didn't end up working out, but so I was a Austin Peterson supporter, even though he's kind of being a dick about this whole thing. But
honestly, though, like, I get what he's saying, and he's got a perfect opportunity, man. Like, we opened the door for him.
He knows exactly what he's doing. I don't even think he believes half the stuff he's saying. Like, he just knows what he's doing to, like, poke the right buttons with his audience.
Yeah, yeah. He's a brilliant guy, dude. He's a brilliant guy.
Like,
he gets his game plan. I don't dislike him. I do think he's a Machiavellian figure. And I do think he's harboring, grinding an axe against the Libertarian Party for the whole Bill Weld, Gary Johnson deal. You know what I mean? Like, he's mad.
Yeah.
Maybe justifiably so. Arguably justifiably
Gary Johnson threw out his pistol. He was upset.
Yeah. That's bullshit. Gary Johnson deserves what he gets.
I know. So Gary Johnson could hold his weed. I'm just saying, like, he could keep it together.
That's awesome. Well,
all right. We should go back to the radio show. We'll keep talking about Chase Oliver. And we'll talk about then we'll talk about the if we can, like, the Pew poll that came out recently about the Democrats and Republicans wanting to replace their candidate. So
okay, I do want to refer to a Reason article too about this whole Trump trial. Like, it's gone, and I think it's timely, right? It's gone to the jury. It's the defense and the prosecution have rested. It's been handed over.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's go back in 3, 2, 1. Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Marion O'Connor.
Hopefully I'm still here, Kevin. I've got a little bit of internet connectivity issues, but we're working on that. And I think I can see, like, I can see it's working out. So anyways, do we have more to talk about like what happened at the Libertarian Convention, about Chase Oliver?
Nothing more at the convention. I'll say for WYSL audience, if you want to know, like, why the more kind of, like, right Libertarian candidate lost, Tim and I talked about that during the break. It has to do with eating the wrong kind of gummies. So if you want to hear that, go find our podcast. And you can
check it out.
Yeah, you can get the dirt on that. No, I mean, like, the only other thing is, like, folks, like, if you have the chance, go check him out. Like, if you're libertarian, like, you're gonna like this guy, like, on the issues. His website's votechaseoliver.com. Check it out. Listen, I really like him. Like, to me, he lines up really well with my politics, and it just, the identity politics thing, like, I don't think is, like, I think his opponents make a bigger deal of it than like he does, even because like during the campaign he's worked hard. And actually, you know, I'll mention one more thing too. Like
Look, it could be that I was completely wrong about that. Yeah.
No, I mean I get it. Like it's a thing that pops up a lot, but like the guy visited all 50 states. Like he made it to like every state Libertarian Party that had a convention. He worked his spot off. And actually, like the one person like on the more like Mises side who I think had like a really good take on this was Maj Toure, who's like, man, that dude outworked everyone else. Like everyone else, like who's running for president, like felt like they could just like go on a handful of podcasts and like be fine. And that guy went to every single convention that he could and shook hands.
Yeah. I mean, you got to give him credit for that for sure. Absolutely. That
like
is
in the
an
same way,
impressive
like
record there.
It absolutely is. Like in the same way, like Larry Sharp talks about like visiting every single county in the state. Like that's what this guy was doing when he was running for president. And like you got to have a ton of respect for that. Because he worked his butt off to try to like shake hands and be on the ground and earn support, which is kind of what you got to do when you're focusing on such a small audience. I'm excited to see how that hard work translates into the general campaign and him trying to interact with voters and with media and hopefully educating people in a way that's going to resonate with your normies, right? Like, because again, the Libertarian Party isn't really like we talked about it. The Libertarian Party is full of kind of weirdos, right? Like, and I say that lovingly, but like that is I don't think unfair. And it's going to be interesting to see how his message translates to like kind of average people, right? Like how's it going to play with like, you know, your random like 32-year-old in upstate New York? I don't know. Not that he's going to be on the ballot in New York anyway. So spoiler for WYSL audience, it looks like the Libertarian Party in New York is not going to be on the ballot. So you'll have to write him in if you like him. But other states, he will be on the ballot. So
yeah, look, there's big challenges for the Libertarian Party all the time, Kevin. So I mean, I'm willing to give Chase the benefit of the doubt. I want the opportunity, or I want to really see him shape his message for a broader appeal. I'd like to see him stay away from identity politics. I already like his anti-war stances. So there's lots for me to be encouraged about. There's lots that I'm skeptical of, but so as I trust you, I have to reconsider my position. Like I wasn't that annoyed anyway. Like I've already been annoyed by the national LP scene. So here we are. I'm not that annoyed right now, you know?
No, and I'm not
that much more annoyed than I have been in the past, as they say.
Right. And I said, for the most part, I try not to pay attention to National Libertarian Party politics at all because I find them very frustrating. and mostly we'll stick to our local and state issues. But so I do want to get to one quick news item, and I know you want to talk about the Trump trial too. But one related news item, just because it's a good segue, is this Pew Research poll came out where they asked people, would you replace Donald Trump or Joe Biden on the ballot? And they asked, you know, all voters, and they asked Republicans, and they asked Democrats, would you replace Joe Biden and Donald Trump on the ballot? And a lot of people said, yeah, they would replace their candidates if they could. Half of registered voters said that they would, if they could, they would replace both candidates. And even among Trump supporters,
replace them with, just out of curiosity.
They didn't say who. They didn't say who because it wasn't like, you know, like they didn't offer them a specific choice. But no, even 35% of Trump supporters said if given the option, they would replace both. And like a lot of them, 62% of Biden supporters said they would replace both if they could. So it's definitely not nothing.
That's honestly, that's incredibly substantial, right? Like that's big news. It suggests an opportunity for the Libertarian Party, doesn't it? Like if we do a good job messaging, can we get this 5%? Can we get these big numbers that we've been hoping to get?
Yeah, I mean that's the opportunity, right? Like people are historically frustrated. They would love to get rid of these guys. Like they're neither of them are really happy with who they've gotten, and now they're most likely stuck with them. Like there's a chance that the either they don't make it to the convention because they're older, and I don't mean to be morbid about it, but they're older, or they decide to step down before their convention for one reason or another, either legal trouble or health trouble or whatever, and the conventions decide to replace them. But probably not. They'll probably muddle on through. And I don't know what the Republicans would do because like there's no like real obvious second choice. But the Democrats are probably like, okay, cool, you get Kamala Harris, and I think a lot of the party would be like, no, wait, go back. No, we'll stick with the old guy. Fine.
I mean that's an interesting conundrum, right? If Joe Biden does not make it to the presidential election, let's just say, Donald Trump is going to win in a landslide, don't you think? Like, yeah, nobody's going to vote for Kamala Harris. Nobody.
No, she's so like her stuff is so strange. Like I haven't seen a good ramble from her in a while. But I'm sure there's a good word salad out there like brewing if she has to campaign more.
They're out there, brother. Like she is just wild. She just strings together words like they're supposed to mean something, and she's like relying on her celebrity to present this notion of her gibberish as important. It's a wild place to be. It's a populist, authoritarian, narcissistic kind of thing that, like, she feels like she can say anything without doing any work to craft words that make sense. I don't know.
Yeah, no, like it's
time, but that's different.
No, sure, but like you're also not the vice president of the United States. Like, if one of us sounds like the student who didn't do the reading before the class, like, yeah, sure, we look dumb on our podcast, but like the stakes are not that high. When she does it again, like there's, in theory, actual power associated with like the role that she could have.
For real, like we can wake up tomorrow and Kamala Harris is president of the United States. And honestly, would anybody be surprised? I don't think so. I mean, there would be no big, huge surprise there.
Yeah. I mean, although to be clear, Donald Trump does that too. Like he went on a weird thing about how he loves Hannibal Lecter the other day. It was very odd.
Oh God, he's nuts, bro.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just crazy.
And this is why everyone wants to replace him.
Sure.
But right, we got like 5 minutes left. Let's talk about the other thing that you want to talk about.
All right. So look, Kevin, I've always kind of been. I look at what's going on in New York State with this Stormy Daniels trial, and I don't have a lot of clarity about it. So for our listeners on the YouTubes and for our friends out there in the audience and guys on WSL to get the actual article, I did post a link to it. So find our webpage. But there's an issue here that Reason Magazine brings up in a very interesting way that mostly the charges of felony campaign tampering would need another layer of a crime for this to actually be a felony. Like there's a possibility that there's a misdemeanor in play, and there's also, and the Reason Magazine also admits that there's a possibility that Trump may be convicted, but and they also admit that Michael Cohen is a big fat liar, which I think is really interesting. But what I want to point out is that the defense rested, the prosecution rested, and now the case has gone to the jury without any kind of clear information as to what we're supposed to understand about this. And I feel like I did offer everybody a Reason article that does a nice job of explaining it. So we get down towards the bottom of the article, and the prosecutor Blanche was on firmer ground in arguing that Trump's defense lawyer, see, now I'm doing a Kamala Harris, Kevin, was on firmer ground in arguing that the prosecution had failed to prove another crime. So for there to be this felony thing, there needs to be a multi-layered kind of issue. for the campaign. What was it? A campaign misdirection of funds? Like, so that's the thing.
Yeah.
When I read the Reason article, I felt like I understood it better. But as I'm trying to pull it forward in less than 5 minutes, I'm having a hard time.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, basically what it was is that, like, the accusation is essentially that when Donald Trump's like legal team, people like Michael Cohen, paid off Stormy Daniels in a settlement, that it was functionally a campaign expense and that it wasn't attributed as a campaign expense, even though it was something that he had paid privately. And there's like insinuation because of like how Michael Cohen chose to pay it in cash and stuff, that like this was an attempt to cover up what should have been filed as a campaign expense. And basically they string together a bunch of like small accused misdemeanors to turn it into a felony. It's such a stretch to do it. Like it's weird. Like, so a lot of stuff, like, again, in New York State, that stuff, I think like Donald Trump has a point where they're going after him personally and he's being like persecuted in New York State because there's people who like are running on like going after him because it's popular with their constituents. And he sort of has a point there, less of a point about some of the other stuff he's involved in, but it's total nonsense. It's New York State, like, just and like the New York City prosecutors just going after him.
Yeah, no, that's what it looks like. And I think at the end of the day, that's what it is. And I think if you guys check out that link to that Reason article, because I do like pushing people to the Reason magazine kind of like whole thing that they offer. It's a very well-written article. It breaks everything down very well. And what we're missing a couple aspects of what, like, non-disclosure agreements are completely legal.
Yeah.
Lawyers craft non-disclosure agreements. They make the payments and then they just put out a bill and take care of it. And it turns out that Michael Cohen isn't just an admitted liar and a convicted felon. He's a guy that stole $30,000 from the Trump campaign and hates Donald Trump. So it's like a bad witness. Like, New York State it looks so messy. It just looks awful.
Yeah. No, it is messy. And, you know, Michael Cohen's like not really a trustworthy guy. Now there's Trump. Michael Cohen also had recorded conversations with his client, which is a weird thing for lawyers to do. You know, it's all very strange.
Yeah, it's bad.
And yeah, it's messy again. Yeah. And I don't think like this whole situation speaks great to like Trump's character. You know, he slept with a porn star while like he was married, right? Like, not great still, but also he shouldn't, like, you know, be charged with a felony for it. Like just because he's sleazy doesn't mean that he should face, you know, legal, like, either fines or I don't know, any other punishment, like even jail time for anything him being with him being sleazy. And I don't know if that's really on the table here, but like they're just trying to get him on something.
They are. And look, this event with Stormy Daniels happened in 2005. Coincidentally, these payments were negotiated in 2016. The purchase of the non-disclosure agreement was in effect took place in 2016, and the payments were made in 2017 to Michael Cohen for legal services rendered.
Right.
It's a dubious legal theory that Trump conspired to hide information from the voting base and this is where it gets me crazy, because literally the entire world conspired to hide Hunter Biden's laptop from the voting base. And here we are, like, Trump's on the hook for something that I feel like the entire deep state already did. It gets weird for me because, like, I'm not going to vote for Trump, but I get why people are upset about it. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I was just going to say, we're out of time now. But thanks again for joining us here on A Free Solution. Appreciate y'all listening to INWYSL. Have a great night, folks. Take care.
I had some funny stuff, Patty. I had some stuff from you. I'm sorry that if the show had flowed better, I would have been able to roll into it. Kevin, Kyle, Texas tried to set a Guinness Book of World Record kind of thing. Take a guess at how what their goal was.
What was it?
To assemble the most number of Kyles ever in one place. They didn't even come close hilarious. Though. They didn't even come close though. They got like 700 Kyles in Kyle, Texas, and like the record is something like 4,000. Some sort of German name in Germany. I can't even remember what that part was, but like so close, man.
It wasn't even close. So they're trying to get the most people of the same name, not merely the most Kyles together.
Oh, they probably did set the record for the most Kyles ever, but it is the Guinness Book recognizes the record as people of one name. So they didn't get there. They didn't make it. They failed miserably. You Texans. That's what's going to happen if you try to secede. You'll fail miserably.
You keep trying, Kyle, so I believe in you.
Yeah. Try again. Try again in Kyle Rittenhouse's hometown. It might work. I do think there was a kind of like, hey, let's support. Maybe it was like for Kyle Rittenhouse's birthday. I don't know. Something. And then I had some other stuff besides the Reason article, but I kind of had to close all of it out because I had too many tabs open in my computer. And so, I don't know. You want to talk about AIPAC, how AIPAC went after Thomas Massey and now they're apologizing and pretended that they didn't?
Oh, weird. I did see something about that. Because he had talked about it.
They spent $400,000 supporting his primary opponent. And guys, what AIPAC is a lobbyist group who wants us to fund Israeli military might. That's what they want. That's what they exist to do. So they went after Thomas Massey for his principled conservative / libertarian positions, and they spent $400,000 against him.
Yeah, so serious money because that's, that Thomas Massey is, for the most part, pretty consistent.
Arguably, so I remember we were kind of mad at him for endorsing the Jones Act because, boats were hitting bridges all over the country. And I'm like, all right. I mean, he admits that he's just a principled conservative at the end of the day. And we claim him because he's so close to being a perfect libertarian serving in the House of Representatives who deals with real issues that I'd almost rather him be just that principled conservative where he's like, all right, guys, I'm not really a libertarian. I'm a principled conservative. Because then people who are calling themselves conservative that look like absolute freaking communists saying, everything under the sun, the 2A is not absolute when it comes to other people, right? They'll do these things yes, we should spend more money on the police, not come up with creative solutions to go around that. If Thomas Massey is a principled conservative and we prop him up as a principled conservative, then we would get more real conservatives that might look at libertarianism as a solution. Is that too circular of a reasoning? Does my logic make sense there?
No, I mean, I kind of get it. It's okay, cool. If that was the baseline for that, ideology, then great. But that's not. But yeah, no, we've kind of come to expect hey man, you're so consistent on everything else. Why are you so wrong about this obvious thing? Do better, man.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Look, my computer's breaking again hopefully we got through a show good enough. And I appreciate the effort. I am scheduled for a new laptop. So it hopefully I thought the first 20 minutes of the show went well. I just feel like the second
then a bus must have arrived and sucked up all the internet.
Man, I was doing a speed test and I'm getting 70 upload and 30 download or whatever the heck. I don't even know what that stuff means, but I was getting these great numbers. And yet, Legacy Zach, AIPAC is a Mossad operation. Look, Mossad is like our CIA. Are they out there in the world involved in influencing political opinion? Absolutely. So sure. Yeah. I don't even feel bad about saying it.
No, I mean, it could be the American government tries to influence other governments in with its soft power all the time. Like it's a thing. Like AIPAC tries to very much say that they are not an official arm of like the Israeli government, but like, yeah, that's they advocate for sure for supporting Israel, both politically and militarily. As is the right of Americans to do that. Like they can do that. I don't believe in shutting that type of speech down. If you don't like it, then argue against it.
It is hard to argue against money, right? Like it's when we had that conversation about how RFK probably accessed the ballot in New York State, it took a massive amount of money. That is hard for people in the middle class to accumulate. So I get where people get frustrated about it, because literally, again, I'll admit to coming from scarcity. And so these numbers boggle my mind, like $1 million to get on the ballot in New York State. And he's going to be on, every other ballot challenge that he had all over the country. He managed to pay the money to get on the ballot there as well. So
it's just one of 50
How is
states.
that fair, bro? How is that fair, bro?
Yeah.
I mean Idaho's like $500.
Yeah. Well, that's why we need a good libertarian sugar daddy to make it rain on the party. Lars could have been that guy too. That was his promise.
Yeah, well, I agree. And I think Lars is in it to win it. When we had Lars on the show, I felt like he's entirely reasonable. And I feel like down the road, he is going to continue to support people that he likes. And I could see him really liking, I could see him really liking Chase. I really do. That could be great for Chase. So Chase, if you're listening or you want to come on this show, I have some suggestions for you on how to shape your messaging to appeal to people that are not as old as Trump, that came from scarcity and a position of conservative, a former conservative. I have ways to help you shape your messaging. Like I can do it for you.
Tim's offering his services. That's gotta reach out.
Not for free though, because free speech ain't free, bro. No, I'm just kidding. Honestly, if you wanted to come on our show, it'd be great. I'd love it.
Yeah. No, we'll have to have him on. I'm sure we'll reach out if he's ever coming through New York State, and who knows. But we'll see. We'll keep it going. I think it's going to be an interesting election. I don't know why he'd go.
Why would he come to New York State? Yeah, no. Why?
There's no reason to. Actually, listen. As offering you free advice, just don't bother. Just
there's our first. Point. Just do a podcast with us from wherever you are, whenever you want.
Do it for fun, but don't come visit. Don't waste your money on New York. Just go to somewhere where you're going to be on the ballot.
Yeah. And a shout out to Patty. I will do some more narration for your life somehow through this podcast. I'm not quite sure how that's going to work out for you, because shit gets weird up here. But I mean, I'm here to help you out. I'm here for you.
Right on. All right. Let's call it a night, because your laptop's breaking. It's late. It's time. All right.
All right, bro.
Thanks for listening, folks.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.